Clerk will call the roll.
Glenn Whitley, County Judge.
Here.
Roy C. Brooks, Commissioner Precinct 1.
Present.
Andy H. Wynn, Commissioner Precinct 2.
Here.
Gary Fickus, Commissioner Precinct 3.
Here.
J.D. Johnson, Commissioner Precinct 4.
Here.
Constitutes a quorum.
Thank you. Our invocation today will be delivered by Reverend Raul Gutierrez.
I
don't either. I was kind of wondering about that.
I don't see him.
With the DA staff. They're not here either.
So, GK, you it?
If everyone will please rise, we'll have an invocation, and then we will follow that by our pledges. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for this day and for the opportunity to meet here together. Watch over us as we do your work. Help us to do your work in everything that we do. For it's in your Son's name that I pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, you dodged that bullet this time, Mr. Manius.
I'll be prepared next time.
Remember that. I will remember that.
You know, we won't talk about it anymore. Members of the Court, we have several announcements for you this morning. The first two are on the County Administrator's agenda. Item 7A1 and 7A2. Both of those items are listed under closed, and we'll be discussing them after closed session today. Also, under purchasing, item 7H2. This is bid number 2012-099. We've been asked to hold that item, and purchasing will put that back on at a more timely or in a different time frame. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Court members, you have before you the minutes of our regular June 5th meeting.
Move approval.
A second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Before we move to the consent agenda, Commissioner Brooks, did you have a comment you wanted to make?
I do, sir, and thank you for the opportunity. Sandra Nelson was the network administrator for Tarrant County Precinct 1 for 10 or 12 years. She came to me last November and said that she wanted to retire. Made no sense to me at the time, but when someone says they want to retire, what can you say? I wish you well. We're going to miss you. You've always been a part of the family. Well, Sandra knew, though she never told anyone else, that her time on this earth was short. She retired so that she could spend the last remaining months of her life the way she had always lived her life. If you knew Sandra, you knew her to be adventurous. She traveled the world. She couldn't find anyone who wanted to go with her. She went by herself. She went to China by herself. She went to the Olympics in Greece by herself. She lived her life on her own terms. Sandra passed away on Saturday morning. And though she had retired, those of us who knew her and loved her will always consider her to be a member of the Tarrant County family. So I ask that we adjourn this meeting today in honor and memory of a very special woman, Sandra Nelson, formerly of IT.
Good. And I have, we're very sad to hear this, but hopefully I have a little bit of an uplifting. Today I want to introduce Tom Stallings. Tom, stand. Tom will be taking Jane's place. Jane had been with me ever since I came to the county, so finding her replacement would have pretty well been next to impossible. So what I have decided that over the next several months I'm going to kind of restructure and reorganize my office. Tom was actually born here in Fort Worth and raised here. He went to Boswell High School. I guess still lives in Commissioner Johnson's precinct. He attended TCU, where he received his bachelor's and his master's degree. And while at TCU, he met his wife, who was also a Fort Worth native, Amanda Gore. They were married. Tom's interest in politics took, I guess both of you were in D.C. for a while, for about 3 years. He has worked on Capitol Hill for a little over 12 years. The last 10, he served as Chief of Staff for Congressman Trent Franks out of Arizona and Congressman Steve Sutherland out of Florida. And most of that time, he's commuted back and forth to Fort Worth on the weekends. He has 3 daughters. And when I asked Tom what really interested him in his job, he said a shorter commute. That's probably about the same thing that his wife, I hope, would say. I have not had a chance to meet her yet. I hope she's excited about you being home. We'll see after a while. But seriously, Tom really brings a unique mix of government knowledge as well as local insight. He won't have to learn a lot about Tarrant County because he lives here, and he won't have to learn a lot about government because really that's been his profession. He's worked with folks in county government, both in the Florida area as well as in the Arizona area. And I think especially in the tough times that we're facing right now, what he'll do is maybe help us to avoid some of the roadblocks that Austin and D.C. have put up in front of us. I wanted to find someone who understood policy and management, communications, and who really understood Tarrant County, and I think Tom's going to be just that person. So I'm very excited that he's going to join us. He's going to come on board July the 1st, and in the meantime, he'll continue his commute back and forth. But after he comes on board, I really have encouraged him to visit with each one of the departments and elected officials just to kind of get to know exactly what we do here and how we do things, because I think the how we do things is probably more important than the what. And that's the thing that excites me about Tom, is that I think he's been in Tarrant County and he understands a lot of the collaborative nature that we have. So help me in welcoming Tom Stallings to the county family.
Welcome, Tom.
Court members, you have before you the consent agenda.
Move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the Court, we have 2 additional items for you this morning. Item number 3, we're requesting that the Court approve an exception to the travel policy as it relates to the Texas Agri-Life Extension Service.
Move approval. Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Members of the Court, on item number 4, we're requesting that the Court approve a lease agreement between Tarrant County and the Autistic Treatment Center, which does business as Autistic Treatment Center, for space at the Resource Connection.
Move approval.
Second.
A motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you. Ms. Tidwell?
Morning. We have one item for the court this morning, and that is to release the $13,306,000 of collateral as requested. Obviously, our balances will still be adequately secured, and when we take in the half payments in June, obviously they'll probably put some back, but they're asking that we release this.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Ms. Glenn.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Morning.
I have three items for the court this morning. The first item, we're asking the court to receive and file the personnel agenda.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
The second item, we're asking the court to approve revisions to the table of organization to add a GOC 3 position in public health. This is a grant-funded position. There will be no impact to the general fund. Public health is requesting actually that this position, this full-time position, replace a part-time position that currently is assigned to the preventive medical clinic. And this individual, once hired, will assist with handling the multiple grants applications that the division works with.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Our final item, we're asking the court to approve the United Healthcare Insurance Company stop-loss policy and stop-loss policy amendment number 1. Again, these are two separate items. The first item, the stop-loss policy, actually replaces the letter of understanding that the court approved a year or so ago. And the stop-loss amendment number 1 actually updates coverage to reflect 2012 rates.
Move approval of both items.
I will second that with a couple questions. The cost increased about 16% according to your, right?
Yes.
From 11 to fiscal 2012.
Correct.
Is that an upward trend? Or-
Yes, sir, it is. I don't have the actual percentages for years past, but typically every year we do see some increases in stop-loss coverage. 2012 was no different. We did see the adjustment that you've indicated for 2012.
I will say this with regards to our specific stop-loss. Each year, I think the insurance companies set the amount perceiving that they're going to finally get into our pockets on this.
Okay.
They have been unsuccessful for at least probably the last
4 or 5 years.
4 or 5 years because we have individual claims. Unfortunately, we have individual claims that the amount that they're paying ultimately over a year's period of time is more than what we pay in premiums. Now, insurance companies,
Right.
each year they tried to anticipate what that was going to be, and unfortunately, because of some illnesses, each year we've come back and still beat them. So it doesn't surprise me that we have a 16% increase. It will not surprise me next year that we might not have an equally bigger one because they don't usually like, on a historical basis, losing money on somebody.
Is this something that we can manage? Is it manageable?
There is case management currently in place to deal with these kinds of claims, and as the judge indicated, typically we're talking about pretty catastrophic claims, large claims. We do have case managers assigned to these accounts, and so these claims are watched very closely. We've had a case or two in the past where the court has actually made exceptions, where we've actually handled care in a different way because it was less expensive than it would have been had we, sort of covered it the way the plan that would have typically covered it. So there is a lot of individual attention given to these claims. In addition to that, PEBC actually works very closely with UHC when we have these large claims. So there's a lot of management. Unfortunately, we've had some catastrophic cases.
We had an instance last year. It was, I believe it was an infant, and the infant eventually passed away.
And we spent $2 million. Well, it was a $2 million claim.
That was a $2 million claim. Wow. So it's some of that stuff we do. Again, I would encourage everybody through our wellness programs. We try to head off some of what could be potentially large claims, but some of these instances are instances that are not for
Just
any way foreseeable.
well, and beyond our control in many
beyond our
cases.
control.
Thank you, Tina.
You're welcome.
Any other discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tina. Mr. Beecham, I was very surprised that you're not at least wearing a red tie this morning. I mean,
It's my understanding that LSU, Kentucky, Texas, A&M, TCU, OU, and OSU are not in the College World Series this year.
Nor is Baylor.
Gosh,
All right.
I hate it when that happens.
I know you do. Renee, you can quit grinning back there, too.
We do have three now items for your consideration this morning. Our first item is a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-097. This is our annual contract for the purchase of fax and multifunction machines. Recommendation will be toward the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors as shown in your court communique.
Move approval. Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
If we can skip to item number 3, was also another bid award recommendation for bid number 2012-102. This is our annual contract for protective clothing and safety equipment, which is used by the precincts. A recommendation will be toward a per unit price basis, again awarding to the primary, secondary, and alternate vendors in your court.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
And our third and last item is again a bid award recommendation for bid 2012-124. This is our annual contract for tire repairs and service. Recommendation would be toward a per enterprise basis, again selecting the primary and secondary alternate vendors as shown in your court.
2012-104 or 124?
104. That's
One-
Well, he's saying 104, but I mean, he's saying 124, but I've got 104 also.
I got 104.
104. Sorry.
I'll move for approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you, James. Mr. Skinner.
Members of the court, we are requesting your approval of an interlocal agreement with the City of Fort Worth related to improvements to Summer Creek Drive and McPherson Boulevard. This is a project that will be funded through Precinct 1 discretionary bond fund.
Move approval.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Thank you. Commissioner Fickus.
The interlocal with the City of Fort Worth for reconstruction of Westport Parkway, Keller Hicks,
Keller Haslett.
I'm sorry. And move for also approval to begin an interlocal agreement with the city for reconstruction of both of those again, and move for approval.
Second.
Have a motion and a second of item 8, K1, A, and B.
Yep.
Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
8 or 7? 7K1.
I'll believe that's, you're right, 7.
I move approval of item 7, K2, A, and B.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Are there any appointments today? Okay, there are no appointments. You have before you the claims, including the addendum.
Move for the approval of the claim register, including the addendum.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Briefing items, Mr. Manius.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, we have one item that we would like to discuss with the court this morning. I'll start this off, but then I believe that both purchasing and I know the district attorney's office might want to make some comments. This concerns an update on the RFP 2012-065, which we talked about last week. It's the enterprise storage products and professional services process. I don't need to go over again the things we talked about last week, but one of the things that we are going to do, we have scheduled meetings with the 3 finalists, the 3 vendors that proposed, and we intend to have those meetings on Friday. It's going to be about an hour and a half presentation by each of those. I do have a proposed outline that we worked up dealing with IT and the other 2 offices that I spoke of. I wanted to share those with you so that each of you would have an understanding as to what we're going to try to accomplish on Friday. Just a quick reminder as to the scope of the discussions Friday. As you know, those 3 vendors have submitted responses to this RFP. In doing so and meeting with them, what our goal is to talk to them in much greater detail about their submittal to that RFP. Make sure that we cover all the bases with them as it relates to the scope of that RFP. This is not going to be a meeting where that alternate solutions can be proposed, because by responsibilities of the Purchasing Act and meeting with the DA's office also, our comments and our discussions can be only within the walls of that RFP. You might note that on item B that we have 4 items or 4 areas that we think are general enough to cover any type of discussions that might occur. It's going to allow those vendors a full opportunity to present their solution, and it'll also give us an opportunity to ask questions as it relates to their presentations. We're going to allow them to ask any questions that they might need to ask, and we intend to fully respond to those questions. There's one item that we talked about last week about vendors may not have had the opportunity to ask questions in the past. I've asked purchasing department to go back and determine how many questions were submitted on these RFPs to begin with. We received 49 questions that were fully answered. Of those, Vion asked 2 questions. Dataspan, which was not one of the 3 finalists, asked 19, and HP asked 28 questions. And all of those responses were submitted back to those vendors and to all the other vendors in writing. So we've tried to give an opportunity to all of the vendors to ask any questions that they might have in order to adequately provide a response and a solution to our RFP request. This meeting that we're going to be holding on Friday is a continuation of that. If they need to ask any further questions or if they want to explain their proposals in any greater extent. That way, if we've missed anything in their submissions, then it'll give us an opportunity to actually hear what that is. At the conclusion of the Friday meeting, and not Friday, but at the conclusion of those discussions, we're asking the evaluation committee to rescore all 3 vendors to ensure that that they're aware of all the information that was presented, and then we'll rescore those again, and we will bring you all the results. We'll be more than happy to try to answer any questions. We have IT ready to answer any questions. Purchasing is here to answer any questions. If you have questions for the district attorney's office, they are present also.
And who's going to be present in that meeting from the county?
I'm sorry?
Who's going to be present in that meeting?
It's going to be Commissioner Wynn, Commissioner Brooks. We're going to have the 5 individuals that were the evaluators initially. We're also going to have David from IT, who is our technical person. He assisted in the evaluations previously. Mr. Russo is going to be in that meeting. I know that Mr. Beecham is going to bring probably 2 or 3 individuals from purchasing that have been working on this. Mr. Reich is going to be in that meeting, and I intend to be in that meeting.
My concern is, now I understand that according to our staff, we believe that we have given the vendors the opportunities to ask their questions and for their questions to be answered. However, according to the vendors, both HP and, was it Vion? Vion. They were not, okay? And some of the email that HP sent, they believe they were not given enough information to propose a proper solution. What you are saying, GK, is basically this Friday, we're going to sit down with each vendor and we're going to try to understand what they're proposing, right?
That's correct.
Okay. We will ask questions and so forth, and then we would go back and re-evaluate those proposals, give them a different scoring system, basically, right?
We're going to ask that the committee rescore
right.
But
whatever they propose, they won't be able to revise it.
That's correct.
And that is where my concern is. what they proposed is based on the information or the lack thereof, the information that they had or did not have. I don't know if meeting with them, trying to understand the proposal, would do any good if they base their proposal upon the wrong information from the very beginning with. You see?
Why would it have been the wrong information?
Or the lack of information thereof.
They asked 20 questions. Why would it be, I mean, they had an opportunity. I mean, I think that's where we've got to be careful in that we put a proposal out there, we specified, I mean, I agree that I don't want them having to basically throw their proposals out on the table in front of everyone. But we set a proposal out, they were able to ask questions. Obviously, Vion asked a couple of questions, Hewlett-Packard asked 20 questions, is that what you said?
28.
28 questions.
Yes.
So, I mean, they weren't hesitant, and so they should have understood that. And it would seem to me like where I thought we were lacking was making sure that in our evaluation of their proposal, we properly evaluated where the evaluation committee thought that one was short or, you know, that their system, what they were proposing didn't meet the qualifications or voted it down. I want to make sure they understood for sure that it didn't fill that role. And that backup was one, and some of those other things. So,
no, I'm just trying to point out that one point right there. If we firmly believe that we have given the vendors sufficient time and opportunity to ask questions and to have their question answered, then your strategy would be proper. If we haven't, okay, if we haven't, like they claim, okay, and if they can prove it to us, then the strategy that you are proposing may not be sufficient. I'm just pointing out that fact.
And Commissioner Wynn, let me say that that there was an issue raised by HP that they didn't have the opportunity to ask questions. I fully intend to ask HP to go into that in detail and tell us exactly what they were trying to ask, how they tried to ask those questions, and what type of rebuff that they had on that. I mean, I think that we have done this RFP just about as pure as we've done any RFPs, quite frankly. We, just as an example, HP asked that we extend the timeline to respond to the RFP for 2 weeks, which we did. I mean, we've met every request that they had. There was emails that were submitted between purchasing and HP, and we tried to respond to each one of those. I believe that we did. And so we're just going to go into these meetings, these discussions on Friday. If they raise a valid issue, well, then we'll have at least we'll have 2 court members there that will hear that issue, and we can bring that result back to the full court. But our goal is to push this process through to a point that the court can make a decision one way or the other.
I continue to believe that we had a fair process. The RFP was clear. Everyone's questions were answered. The same information was available to each and every firm that responded to the RFP. There was nothing that was given to one that was not given to all. Each submitted their best response based upon their understanding of what the RFP was requiring. And to a large extent, we're not responsible for their understanding of what the RFP required, except to answer their questions as fully and completely as we can possibly do, which we did. We're going to go through this process on Friday and give each vendor a chance to present in person whatever they think we missed. But beyond that, to go beyond that, we would end up having to cancel the RFP, rewrite it, go back out, take another 2 months at least to receive and evaluate the new RFPs, the new responses to the new RFP, and that's a waste of time for us. It's a waste of time for our staff. It's a waste of time for the vendors, just because some vendor wants to wag the dog. I'm not trying to be wagged by a vendor. I think we did what we were supposed to do, and we've bent over backwards.
Mr. Fickus, did
I don't have a question. I'm going to just let this process go forward. We'll see what happens.
any other questions, any other discussion?
No, I'm fine.
We are going to send this outline to the three vendors today so that they're fully aware of what the agenda will be looking like on Friday. Your Honor,
Okay.
with that, we don't have anything else for the court this morning.
At this time, we'll recess our open meeting, proceed to closed session, and discuss items exempted under sections 551.071. Having returned from our closed session, we'll now address the following matters.
Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, if we could go to the administrator section A2, we're requesting that the court authorize the appointment of attorney Don Hasse to represent Sheila Perry, an election worker, with regard to Arlington Municipal Citation 000598758, dated May 25, 2012, and any appeals related thereto, for an amount not to exceed $165 an hour, with an amount not to exceed $5,000 total, and to find that this expenditure furthers a county purpose and that the citation was for an act performed in the bona fide performance of official duties.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously. Please note that Commissioner Wynn is not available at this time.
And please note that we are adjourning in honor and memory of Sandra Nelson.
Momentarily.
We have one other item.
Under the DA's office, item D2, we're requesting permission to file suit against Robert Doris with regard to collection of a claim that we have against him for his vehicle.
Move approval.
Second.
Motion is second. Any discussion? Please vote. Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That's all we have at this time, Your Honor.
Judge, I just want to call to your attention that before budget time, District Clerk Tom Wilder says it's your time to buy lunch. I thought you might like to know that prior to the budget.
It is budget time, yeah?
Yeah, okay. It is budget time.
Yeah, and I want to talk about these people being, these people that are out on, being able to come in and work, but they got limited work status, and, we could be using them in other departments to, we're adjourned.
Who was the lady? Did they buy us lunch too? Who was the lady proposing today?
Sandra Nelson.
Did I get outside counsel?